Good morning and welcome to First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. I am Reverend Margaret Weis. My pronouns are she and her, and I have the pleasure and privilege of serving as your sabbatical minister for this week and the next few. Leading worship with me today are Dolores DeLumba, pronouns she, her, as our worship associate, Brock Chesvolt, he, him, for our music, Michael Scott, he, him, for providing our tech support, and Lisa Gwinner, she, her, and Richard Reed, he, his, for our online ministry team. If you're here this morning for the first time, we especially welcome you. Thank you for making your way to this worshiping community. We have a visitors form that can be found in the chat for our folks online and can be accessed by scanning the QR code in your pews or on the back of your order of service. So please fill out this form if you are visiting us so that we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. Before we take a moment to turn to our neighbor and say hello, let us take a moment to turn towards the folks online, the camera, and give a wave, welcome. If you're online, please pop into the chat to offer a greeting, and just a note that if you have a joy or sorrow to share online, to wait until the joys and sorrows portion of the service. And if you're here in the room, I would like to invite you to take a moment, turn to your neighbor, say hello, good morning. I know. Oh, good. They're all new to me.
Oh, of course.
Well, actually, I do recognize some folks from here before. All right. And let's take our joy of welcoming one another and bring it into singing our opening hymn, number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Well, fall began yesterday. Officially, can winter be far behind? Some of you like winter. Lately, I've come to think of fall as sort of a last hurrah. I see the trees blaze in their glorious beauty as they prepare for the cold weather to come. And I think that fall is telling me that there's still time to make more of a dent in that long list of outdoor chores. Concurrently, and much more important, I think I'm being reminded that even though it's late, there's still time for me to help make our world a better place. So when I found Grant Walton's poem, The World We Make, it resonated with me, and I'd like to share part of it with you. We make the world in which we live by what we gather and what we give, by our daily deeds and the things we say, by what we keep or we cast away. We make our world by the beauty we see in a skylark song or a lilac tree, in a butterfly's wing, in the pale moon's rise, and the wonder that lingers in midnight skies. We make our world by the life we lead, by the friends we have, by the books we read, by the pity we show in the hour of care, by the loads we lift and the love we share. Dear ones, we are gathered here in love. The loads life gives us are so much easier to bear in shared community and the love that is given in fellowship. Come, let us worship together. As Shirley Bond lights our chalice, may we say together our chalice words. May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Okay. May we rise in body or spirit and speak of our affirmation of faith and doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is a sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus we do covenant with each other and with all. Our church is here to serve our community. We ask that you continue your generous support of these efforts as we join together in our ritual of shared commitment. You are invited to drop an offering in the offering basket or to give online by scanning the QR code in your pew. For folks online, please click the link in the Zoom chat window to give to First Universalist Church. You can also send a check in the physical mail. Thank you for your generosity.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. So this morning, I'm tasked with telling you a story, but I'm going to ask for your help. So as some of you may know, I am a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. I grew up outside of Boston in North Andover, which probably means nothing to all of you New Yorkers. All right, but people know it. And it's a very old congregation. My parents are still members there. It's a lovely, lovely building. They just made their pulpit accessible, which I hear is like in the murmurings here. So more about that later. But so I was raised in this congregation, and in that process, I did the coming of age program. And that happened for me in my 8th grade year. And at the end of that, the culmination, we each wrote our belief statement and we shared what we believed. And we also, for the first time, which has now become a tradition there, created a quilt together. And what that meant was we as a group sort of came up with a concept for this quilt, and then each of us would come up with our own quilt square or piece, as it came to be. They weren't all squares. That sort of was an illustration of who each of us was at that moment and sort of what we brought to the group. And I've been thinking about this a lot in this theme of belonging together and sort of what does that look like for us to be in community together. And I'll be reflecting more on that in this service. But I wanted to sort of create this opportunity for me to hear a little bit from you what might be in your quilt squares. So I think often, and for us at that age, a lot of times it was like what we did. So there were a lot of like soccer balls and violins and whatnot. And maybe you would still have a soccer ball on yours. But it's interesting to think about what that square might look like over time, right? The square that we had when we were 13 or 14 might look very different when we're in our 50s or 60s. And in some ways, that's like our beliefs, right? They grow and they change. There might be some constants, but there might also be some things that shift. So I'm wondering, for the brave souls that want to share, what might you put in your square? Like what might be in your quilt square? Yes. Say. Animals, yes. Okay, so maybe the shapes of animals or like a print or something. Great, all right. Yes. Wildlife and yes, things out in nature and wonderful, lovely. I love this quilt already.
Like quilts.
Okay, so a quilt, how meta, right? A quilt inside a quilt. I love it. I love it. Yeah? Ooh, I love that. Yes. Say again? Sudoku. That's solved or not solved? Half solved. Yes, everything's half solved, right? None of us really know the full answer. Yes. Downward dog. Love it. Okay. Wow, we got a lot of detail. There's like movement in that quilt square. I love that. Yes. Say? Trans flag. Great. Love it. Yes. Woods. Okay. Lovely. Yes.
A bicycle.
A bicycle.
I delivered papers then and I delivered dentures now.
Okay. From delivering papers to dentures. I love it. It's one-stop shopping. Yes. Family. Love it. Racial equity. Beautiful. Hands. You know, it's funny. That was what my quilt square was when I was 13, was hands. And there were like animal, I'm actually hearing a lot of, there was no Sudoku. I wasn't aware of Sudoku at the time. Yes. The globe, the planet. I love this quilt. Well, music. Yes, yes. I think, you know, I was a little worried actually. I was like, are people gonna think, like be able to sort of come up with an idea in the moment? And I am impressed. Well done. I love that quilt. Can you start making that? You just make that happen? All those details?
There's one that we made right next to your
Oh, there is. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we've done this before. So as you can see, there's a lot of different items that would be on there, but I also saw some heads nodding, so I'm imagining that some of that, resonated with each of you. Maybe many of you would put woods on there, or there might be, a big theme that's sort of an overarching thing. So thank you for sharing your ideas and for bringing your whole selves to this place. So this morning we're going to enter into a time of more reflection, a time of the sharing of joys and sorrows of this congregation. And I invite you at this point to place a hand on your heart, if you feel so called to do so. This might help you to hear these from a heart-centered place. Dolores will be placing stones in the bowl, and I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. And also those who are online, you can see that there's the chat. There will be some sharing of joys and sorrows there as well. First, I would say Tess and Kevin McFarland Porter share the sorrow that Kevin's mom, Judy McFarland, has died after a swift decline in health. She was a wonderful mother. To live in hearts that love is not to die. A sorrow from Connie Volk. Rochester area houses of worship had to increase security because of bomb threats during Rosh Hashanah services. And she gives us the words of Rabbi David Abrahams. Anti-Semitism does not just affect Jews, it affects everyone and spreads like cancer. A joy from Connie. Our church hosted a successful fringe event yesterday, thanks to all who came to support it. Another joy from Trish Gallagher. I spent most of the summer in the Adirondacks in Ireland with friends and family. The best part was the week in Dublin with my daughter Kelsey and her husband and 2 babies. Now it's great to be back home. Sorrow from Kate Kosior. For the families and friends of Mary Schumacher, my dear friend who died of cancer in August, and Susan Taggart, who lost her battle with dementia in May. From Kitty Forbush, this is a sorrow and a joy. My beloved stepson, Cameron, hit a deer while riding his motorcycle, resulting in a broken collarbone, 4 broken ribs, and a broken wrist, many bruises, and road rash. The joy, he's alive and recovering from his injuries. And a joy from Hal Bauer, our 3-month-old granddaughter, Liva Wren, yes, and family are doing well in Arlington, Virginia. We drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May we all be held in the heart of love. Holy Mystery, Spirit of life and love, whom we know by many names and who knows us only as beloved. We lift up our hearts this morning with gratitude for this gathering in community. This week has again brought us great joy, great sorrow, great opportunities for growth and learning. We hold in love those moments of sorrow and concern about those who are mourning and those who are most vulnerable in our community. As always, we hold in our hearts concern for those among us who are experiencing illness of the body or mind, and we celebrate, along with all those who are celebrating birthdays and anniversaries, those who have found a renewed sense of purpose this week. We find ourselves on the brink of Yom Kippur, the holy day in Judaism where forgiveness is given and received. May we pause and reflect on which of our behaviors and actions have harmed others, and may we ask for forgiveness. May we also create space for others to ask forgiveness from us, and may we open ourselves to grant it. Let us find the healing in letting go and beginning again. May we remember always that the fabric of our lives is sewn together with fine strands of sorrow, joy, heartbreak, and love. In our moments of trial and difficulty, may we be held in love and reminded of our ability to keep going. In our moments of celebration and joy, may we remember with gratitude the ways we have been buoyed and supported by our communities. May we continue to show up for one another and ourselves. May we have the courage to choose courage over comfort. May we have the curiosity and wonder to move beyond what we know today and what we might come to understand tomorrow. May we remember always that we are loved, worthy, and good, just as we are. We ask these things in the name of all that is holy and good and true. Amen. Blessed be. I have taken pottery classes twice in my life. Once when I was 7, I actually don't remember that, but once not too many years ago. I just love this feeling, the grittiness of the clay and creating something with my own 2 hands. And so a few years ago, I took a class on the pottery wheel, throwing clay. I wanted to try something that was new to me, something different than ministry, and I imagined it would be amazing to create something that I could hold and touch, that I got to see from beginning to end. Because so much of what we do in congregations in life is not that way. So much of what we do is think about or learn about or explore ideas or concepts or questions. We spend a lot of time in our heads, not a lot of time in our bodies. So much of being in religious community has to do with starting conversations about new ideas or continuing to implement those ideas that took shape long ago, but rarely do we see something from beginning to end through its whole lifespan. Unless we do so intentionally, we will not create something entirely new and see it all the way through. And so in my first year as a parish minister, I turned to a pottery class. I sat at the wheel, a little nervous, but also excited, which I like to call skited, just scared and excited together. And I imagine that in my first session, it was a series of 8 classes, 8 weeks, I would start with something simple. I'd make 4 matching bowls. I'm guessing that those who are laughing know how ridiculous this goal was. The first task was to center the clay on the wheel, throwing the clay. That's the throwing. There's not actual throwing, which was somewhat disappointing. But you throw the clay onto the wheel and you center it on the wheel. And this took me the whole first class, just centering it. By the time I got the clay centered, it was time to clean up, and I did, but not before asking the teacher if I could just leave it there until the next week, save myself some time. She was not game for that. And so I came back the next week and I was ready to start again. And during this class, it took me less time to center the clay, but I barely got the edges up on the bowl before the time was up. So again, I scraped my clay from the wheel, I balled it up, I headed home. And this is how it went from session to session to session until finally I finished my first piece. As my wife would say, it's a bowl only a mother could love. As it turns out, it was a bowl only my wife could love because I gave it to her, and it still sits on our counter in our home. But I made it from beginning to end. Over 8 painstaking weeks, I made it. And as with most new things that I've tried, I learned a lot in the process. A lot about this idea of centering and leaning in, connection between my left hand and my right, feeling where more pressure was needed and where I needed only to have my hand there to gently guide the clay. And I learned about getting in tune with the rotation of the wheel as it whirled on. And I learned that actually it wasn't all that different from life. Specifically, it wasn't much different from living into covenant in religious community like we do in our congregations. When we gather in religious community, we learn some of those same things. The feeling of leaning into new experiences or moments of uncertainty, the feeling of pushing ourselves here, leaning back there, integrating different parts of ourselves, finding a rhythm in a world that is whirling around us. Now, I once thought that there wasn't much tangibility in ministry, but it turns out there are some tangible things we create together. A quilt, for instance. And this happens as we bring our energies together. And so I'd like to share a piece that was written by my colleague, Reverend Marcus Leifert. He writes this: "The Unitarian Universalist congregation where I served as an intern made a mosaic tree of life the summer before I arrived. Congregants of all ages came together to craft the tree's leaves, using bits and pieces of broken ceramics, jewelry, glass, stone. There are many precious personal items in that tree, including fragments of the Berlin Wall, a father's watch face, pieces of great-grandmother's china, and a key to the front door of a beloved home. Like the members of the community that brought them together, each part is imbued with memories and meaning. Each fragment holds a piece of truth. Unitarian Universalists are mosaic makers," Marcus writes. "We are a people who bring together the broken pieces of our histories and the shining pieces of our seeking and piece by piece create a mosaic religion. Our tree of life is found in the stories of our living tradition, the bead from a transformational moment of worship at a youth conference, a bit of paper stamped with the blazing emblem of the Unitarian Service Committee that saved lives during World War II, the button or a patch on a backpack that proudly proclaims the first justice issue that lit our souls on fire. But our mosaic making tells another story too, he goes on, one that is often more difficult to see, one that is essential to the purpose of religious community. It lies not in the beautiful and broken bits and pieces, but in the space between, in the grout. Grout, that chalky, gritty stuff that's squeezed between the cracks of the tiles. In a mosaic, it holds the image together, unifying disparate pieces into a whole. The grout of a community takes years to lay and settle. Grout happens in board meetings and committee meetings and endless emails and slow-moving institutions. It's in the weekly potlucks shared by neighbors, a ride to church, coffee in the social hall after worship. And while folks who show up for church only on Christmas and Easter will hopefully enjoy the beauty of the mosaic they find, they may never know the power of the grout that holds us through all seasons of life. It's in the grout that we come together, in the space between that we make something beautiful. My colleague Marcus offers tangible things, radical ideas, like welcoming the stranger, opening ourselves to those who are different from us, the ways we show up for one another when we need extra care, blessing babies who are new to this community, remembering our beloveds who have died, the casseroles and the rides and the visits. These are the tasks of religious community. They have been for generations. They are the grout that holds us together. And that grout shares that earthy texture of clay as it takes shape. And just as the mound of clay on a wheel takes shape over time, shifting its weight and needing to be recentered in different and creative ways, so do our communities. Each of us is a part of shaping this congregation. And in turn, this congregation shapes us. And as time passes, our collective experiences grow and change, and so do we, and so do our communities. And just like learning a new creative skill or learning about how clay moves and is molded in different ways, we build upon our knowledge and skills along the way. We deepen in our understanding of the world and our place in it, and we will be undoubtedly humbled in the process. We find integrity in physical objects and potentially in ourselves. In reflecting on this idea of integrity, I'm intrigued by the ways we define it. Integrity is this idea of being strong and true, of being whole and solid and consistent. Perhaps integrity is also doing what's right, even when, or maybe especially when, it's difficult. We learn all of this as time goes on too. And as long as we are intentional about it and come to realize that authenticity is required for us to truly understand integrity. Each new experience holds within it the possibility to shape us and our worldview. This is a core belief in Unitarian Universalism, that our experiences shape and shift the ways we make meaning in the world. What we experience and who we are in the world matters to us. Our shared tradition of Unitarian Universalism is what we call a living faith, one that is living and breathing in practice. Unitarian Universalists are mosaic makers, Reverend Marcus Leifert reminds us. We piece together these seemingly disparate ways of being through the grout of community and shared traditions. We find a way of belonging together. This means that we, this congregation, our faith tradition at large, glean some of our integrity from the generations of folks who have gone before us, who have shaped it before us. In a sense, it's as if Unitarian Universalism is one large pot with multiple potters over time, one taking over from the next to help shape the next generation of creativity and potential. And in doing so, the foundation of our history lives on in new creative ways through each of us as we help to shape it and allow it to shape us. This is what it means to be a covenantal faith, one that has foundations in the promises we've made to one another. Promises from generations before us, promises to generations to come, that we will keep the wheel spinning, that we will continue to shape this tradition, that we will carry forward the traditions and pass on what we've learned to those who come after us. The past few years have been a whirlwind for most of us. The very makeup and foundation for so much of our lives has been shaken. Many of us have come to a deeper understanding of what's most important, what centers us, and others have had to slow down and keenly focus on smoothing the edges, staying centered. In a way, we've been invited into a process of reflection about integrity, the integrity of our institutions, our communities, our relationships, ourselves. So what does that mean? Well, the social scientist, social worker, speaker, and writer Brené Brown once said that integrity is choosing courage over comfort. Integrity is choosing courage over comfort. What does that look like? What does it look like for us as individuals and in community, and specifically for a religious and spiritual community? Well, my colleague, Reverend William Gardner, also a UU minister, once said, "We have two religions, the religion we talk about and the religion we live. It is our task to make the difference between the two as small as possible." This is what it means to live a life of integrity as a person of faith, to make the difference between the religion we talk about and the religion we live as small as possible. To choose courage over comfort, to lean in, to push ourselves, to realize that it's an ongoing process with shifts along the way, causing us to adjust and recenter and sometimes scrap it all and start again. We do this as individuals and as communities of faith. And it means that just like with the clay on the wheel, sometimes we have to press harder and sometimes we have to back off. It means that finding our shared center and being able to adjust to unexpected changes may challenge our shared understanding of who we are as an individual or a community. It means that we need to find new ways to widen the circle more and more as it's possible, but only if we intentionally recognize the ways that we've kept it small and limited. To have integrity doesn't mean to be rigid and unchanging, but I'd argue that it means to find a stabilizing force that allows us to move forward into the unknown, not lose ourselves in the process, and to choose the courage of learning over the comfort of what we already know. This is what we practice every week. This is what Unitarian Universalism helps us to do. Discover those forces that give us stability in an ever-changing world, give us a soft place to land, and help us practice living our values in our daily lives. Ideally, it helps us shorten the gap between how we say we want to live and how we actually live. And it does so through intention and practice. In a world that would tell us integrity is the result of rugged individualism, let us lift up those communities that help us live our best lives. In a world of do as I say, not as I do, may we resist and resist again. In a world that is spinning, threatening to throw us off center, let us find stability and strength in those forces that give us roots and hold us steady. In a world that suggests we must be one way for all time, let us remember the flexibility that is possible by leaning in and getting our hands dirty in the process. Let us remember that it is possible to stop and reset and begin again. We have the power and the responsibility to shape ourselves and our communities with intention and focus, to connect disparate pieces with the grout of community and care, to craft new possibilities and opportunities, to lean in the places that need us most, to choose courage over comfort, to piece together the pieces and make something new, to widen the circle until it is large enough to hold all who wish to enter in. So let us do so in the spirit of love and compassion. So may it be. Amen. And blessed be. Our final hymn is number 131, Love Will Guide Us, if you'll rise in body or in spirit. Please remain standing as we extinguish our chalice flame this morning, and we'll read together the words printed on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. As we close our service this morning, I invite you to place a hand again over your heart. If you're joining us online, I invite you to turn your settings to gallery view. Look upon the faces that are gathered here today. For those of us in the room, glance around. Know that all are welcome to gather for coffee and conversation after this service or in the Zoom room. And in these days to come, when we are often pushed beyond our comfort, may we lean into the unknown. May we find our times when we feel worried and afraid that we are reminded of our strength and resilience. Let us remember to reach out to one another, forever seeking ways to practice preemptive radical welcome and widen our circle more and more and more until we are all encompassed by its embrace. May we continue to offer our love and our courage to this beautiful and broken world. Go in peace. And let the people of the church say, Amen. was lovely.